Hey there, guys. This is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. Yes, I know it's been a little over 7 days since I posted a movie review, or just video in general, but just haven't really felt the motivation to lately, and with, work going on and stuff like that. But since I already reviewed a Christmas movie, I figured might as well review at least a couple more this December season, and today's Christmas movie I'm going to be reviewing is How the Grinch Stole Christmas from the year 2000, directed by Ron Howard, starring Jim Carrey. Now, this is a movie that I do have a lot of nostalgia for. I did grow up with it. This actually was my introduction to Jim Carrey. I first saw this movie, I think I was around 3 or 4 years old, so this would have been around 2003, 2000. I was either 3 or 4 at the time, so I was around, so this would have been around either 2006 or 2007, so I was a little kid, and yeah, liked this movie then, and I still like this movie, watching it again for like the 100th time, This is a movie that I do watch every December, but before we get into the review, I want to hear from you guys down below. What do you guys think of this movie? And what was your first experience with this movie like? Is it a movie that you didn't like as a kid, but you like now as an adult? Or you just, or you've always liked it like me? That would be that would just be an interesting conversation. But anyways, so the plot of the movie is as follows. I mean, come on, it's the Grinch. I mean, everyone knows what the Grinch is. Whether you're a fan of the movie or not, or the Dr. Seuss book, you know what the Grinch is. For those who have been living under a rock, basically, the Grinch is actually a book. It was a children's short story book published in 1957 by, of course, Dr. Seuss, who's well known for Cat in the Hat and other stories. And it was a very popular book when it came out. And then in 1966, there was a 24 TV special made for TV animated movie of the Grinch, which, I do love that 1966 television spot. And while I don't think this movie is quite as good as the 60s version, or the 24-minute TV special, I still think that this is a rather good film, especially for a live-action adaptation. This is a good adaptation, Now, obviously, it's a short story, so they had to make changes to the movie to make it feature-length, but anyways, how was this movie made? Well, growing up, now, like I said, when the short story by Dr. Seuss came out in 1957, How the Grinch Stole Christmas was a very popular book and a very popular children's book. And of course, like I said, there was the 1966 made-for-TV animated kids movie, but it was not even really a movie. It was more so just like a short, like a 24-minute TV special. But that was very popular, and it still is to this day. So because of that, for many years, many studios were trying to get the rights to do a live-action film adaptation. Well, in the 1990s, Ron Howard was officially hired as director, who, at this point was a very well-known director with movies like Willow with Warwick Davis, which I do rather like that movie, and of course, the movie Apollo 13, which that movie celebrated its 30th anniversary that year, and that's a really good movie. I do like Apollo 13. I probably should review that someday, but that's a whole nother video, whole nother topic, whole nother day. But anyways, because of this, Universal was pushing for some other actors, when they hired Ron Howard as director. Now, I know before Jim Carrey took over, they were either talking about Jack Nicholson or Eddie Murphy, which I could maybe see Jack Nicholson, but Eddie Murphy, now, do not get me wrong, I really do like Eddie Murphy as an actor, but to be honest, I do not see him working in this role. I don't think that would have worked. His performance would have been, I'm sorry, as much as I love Eddie Murphy, I cannot picture him in this movie. His performance, it would have been in one year, out the other. It just would not have worked, but I think ultimately picking Jim Carrey was the right choice, and Ron Howard was really pushing for Jim Carrey because Jim Carrey, of course, was a fan of the Dr. Seuss book, and of course, the 1966 animated TV special adaptation. So he was delighted when he got the opportunity to play the character. And when this movie was released on November 17th of the year 2000, it received mixed reviews from critics and audiences, but it was a big hit. It was a huge hit at the box office, making $348 million worldwide on a $123 million budget. And this movie, over the years, has become a huge cult classic. Now, as for my reaction to the movie, I really like this movie. But anyways, let's get into the review. So, the movie starts off where there's this really beautiful scenery in Whoville, and one thing I will say about this movie, this movie definitely looks like $123 million. Like, you can definitely tell that they put the money on screen because the production design in this movie is really good, especially for like a live action movie adaptation of a Dr. Seuss story. Like, I really like the production design. Like, it definitely looks and feels like the Dr. Seuss story brought to life, and I thought that Ron Howard did a rather good job with that. But at the beginning, there is this narrator that says, all the Whos in Whoville love Christmas, but the Grinch on the hill past Whoville did not, and stuff like that. And, because obviously everyone knows the story of the Grinch, he hates Christmas, he hates Christmas, but, eventually at the end of the story, he does grow a heart, and he goes from hating Christmas to loving it, of course, in the original Dr. Seuss story. And yes, this movie does have it here, but again, like I said, it was a short story with, like, maybe not even 20 pages, so obviously, if they were going to make this as a live-action feature film, obviously, changes were going to have to be made. And I think the changes do work well in this movie for the most part. And Jim Carrey as the Grinch, I thought Jim Carrey was perfectly casted in this role. I thought that he was funny, and he was also intimidating when he needed to be, too. But anyways, getting into the review of the movie, and also, another thing I do like, the narrator in this movie is actually Anthony Hopkins himself. Yes, the actor who played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, which I thought was rather cool. But anyways, so like I said, Anthony Hopkins is the narrator, and basically he narrates at the beginning of the movie, all the Whos in Whoville loved Christmas, but the Grinch did not. And obviously, the Grinch, he lives in a place that's like, maybe half a mile away, but it's, as you can see on the front cover, it's basically like this giant mountain hill with like a secret door he has, and his doormat basically says buzz off. And I love the part when when some of the when two girls and two guys go up on top of the hill, and then one of them's teasing one of the girls. He's like, "You're scared of the Grinch." And then I love the part when I love the part when the Grinch's door is open, when two of the teenagers open it, and then there's like this robot head of like a monster that comes out scaring them, and they run away, and then it's revealed that it's Max, which is the Grinch's dog and stuff like that, who barks into it, and the Grinch is like, "Good job, Max," and stuff like that. And again, I thought that Jim Carrey did a really good job as the Grinch, especially the makeup effects. In fact, fun fact, for those of you guys who don't know, my favorite horror movie of all time is the 1982 science fiction horror film, The Thing, starring Kurt Russell, directed by John Carpenter. Well, fun fact, this might surprise you, Rick Baker, the guy who did the special effects to the 1982 movie The Thing, he's actually the makeup artist that designed the makeup on the Grinch. So, okay, the makeup artist of my favorite horror film of all time, doing the makeup in a film that is intended for children. I thought, okay, that was rather cool. And again, I think the makeup's really good. Now, Jim Carrey is a fan of this movie, and he is proud of how it turned out. However, he said the makeup was one of the most uncomfortable experiences he ever had because of all the makeup they had to put on his face. And no joke, they literally had to put makeup on his face like the suit and the makeup, it took over 8 hours. And yeah, I would imagine it'd be very uncomfortable, but it was absolutely worth it to do for him to do that because it worked well for the movie. But anyways, getting back to the review, we are introduced to this little girl named Cindy Lou, who was, of course, in the original story. And Cindy Lou Who is played by Taylor Momsen, who I don't know why I gotta be honest, I don't know why she wasn't a bigger actress in Hollywood, because because after this movie, she kind of just disappeared. I mean, yes, she was in some movies here and there, like she was in the 2002 war movie, We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, where he plays Mel Gibson's daughter, which I do really like that. I do like that movie. I do think that is a pretty good World War II movie, But anyways, so yeah, you have that actress as the lead character, and Cindy is a fan of Christmas, but Cindy is curious to know one question. Why does the Grinch hate Christmas so much? And, early on in the movie, she finds out the backstory of the Grinch, where, she basically takes her dad's tape recorder and stuff like that, and, goes to people she knows, and they basically, end up giving Cindy Lou the story, how basically, when the Grinch was a little kid, he basically was delivered in a carriage that was floating in the air and, landed at the doorstep. And the Grinch grew up and they basically raised him as his own until the Grinch was 8 years old. And the 8-year-old Grinch is played by a guy named Josh Ryan Evans, who I'm not familiar with as an actor, but I thought he did a good job of like the 8-year-old Grinch, who, granted, he does not play a major role in the movie because this is backstory, of course, but basically, we learned the backstory that the reason that the Grinch hates Christmas so much is because the Grinch was wanting to be friends with, he was wanting to be friends with Martha May and stuff like that, who, played by Christina, Baranski, I think that's how you say her name. But anyways, this is her telling the story when she's younger, where basically the Grinch went to the school, and of course, the mayor of the town said, there's no way you have a chance at her. You're 8 years old and you have a beard. And, basically the kids were picking on the Grinch and making fun of him, and he didn't like that. And then the next day, the Grinch shows up to school wearing a paper bag. He takes it off. And we see that there's like scabs on his face, and then everyone's laughing. And then the mayor as a kid's laughing, saying, "Look at that hack job!" And everyone's laughing, and this infuriates the Grinch. And then he yells, "I hate Christmas," and starts causing a rampage in the classroom. And then the Grinch basically runs up top to the mountain, and then now we cut to the Grinch now, and that's basically why the Grinch hates Christmas, which I thought that was a really good backstory, because again, the original book is a short story. We don't really know the reason why he hates Christmas in the original story. I like how with this movie, we actually got to know the reason behind that. And again, I really like Jim Carrey as the Grinch. I think he's rather funny in this movie. Like, for instance, early on in the movie, when the two kids who went to the Grinch's cave run down, they basically yell, "It was the Grinch," and of course, everybody freaks out, they're running, and of course, the Grinch is wearing a disguise, like, he's basically wearing, like, a brown robe, like, basically, like, a brown cloak and a hood, but, like, a fake human mask, and then the Grinch yells, "What do you want?" But then I love the part when the Grinch is like, Grinch, oh no, like, yeah, I know I'm not doing the best impression of it, but I thought that scene was funny. And there are some jokes in this movie. Obviously, like I said, this is a kid's movie. It is a PG rated film, of course, but there was a good adult joke in this movie that, as many times as I've seen this movie, I didn't notice it until now. Like, there's a funny part where the Grinch, because we all know that the Grinch is green. He's a green creature, but I love the part when one of the guys is scared of the Grinch. He's like, "Why are you scared of me? Is it because I'm green?" I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that joke, okay, all right. I see what you were doing there, Ron Howard. But yeah, that joke was funny, honestly. And of course, the Grinch, of course, in the movie, the Grinch, he ends up stealing all the presents and bringing them to his lair. However, Cindy Lou Who, the little girl, throughout the course of the movie, was trying to convince the mayor that, that the Grinch deserves another chance and stuff like that. And then, however, the Whovilles, when they're sad, when their presents are gone, they realize that they need each other and that's all that matters. So then the Whovilles, all the Who's and Whoville start singing in like a beautiful voice, and so loud to where the Grinch can hear it from where he's at the mountaintop from where he's at. And and Anthony Hopkins narrates, but the Grinch realized he heard a sound, but it wasn't a sound. But it wasn't the sound of crying. It was the sound of cheerful singing and stuff like that. And then, like Anthony Hopkins narrates in the movie, the Grinch's heart grew 3 times its size that day. And of course, the Grinch now cares about Christmas. And of course, Cindy Lou Who, the little girl who, I know this is blurry, you can't see her the best, but the girl on the cover right here, basically, goes to the Grinch, to the top of the Grinch's mountain on top of a sleigh, and the Grinch is like, what are you doing here? And she said, I came to see you. Nobody should be alone on Christmas and stuff like that. However, the Grinch is able to, when the sled is about to fall off the hill, he's able to pull it back up, lift it up in the air, and then he's able to turn the sled around, and then him, Cindy Lou Who, and his dog Max, they end up, bringing the sled into town and stuff like that. And the Grinch says, yes, I am the Grinch that stole Christmas, and I want to say that I am sorry, because, like I said, the Grinch, he no longer hates Christmas, and now the Grinch has grown to really love Christmas, and the Grinch redeems himself as a character, and he apologizes for his actions and stuff like that, and the mayor's like, arrest him, and then and the mayor says, did you hear what he said? And then one of the cops says, yes, I heard him. He said he was sorry. And the Grinch says to the mayor, cheer up, it's Christmas, man. And also, Martha May Hoover basically says, I'm sorry, but my heart belongs to someone else, and she ends up giving away her engagement ring that the mayor gave her, and says her heart belongs to the Grinch. And then the Grinch says to the mayor, cheer up, it's Christmas. And then the movie ends on a happy note where the Grinch invites everyone to his mountain to basically have dinner and hang out for Christmas, and then the movie ends on a good note. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is a good movie. Now, if I really only have some negatives, some of the CGI, like when the sled is going in the air, I don't think is really held up the best. And I will say, I do think that most of the humor is funny in the movie, but there's one part that I didn't think was that funny. I didn't care for, but other than that, the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas from 2000, directed by Ron Howard, is a fun Christmas movie that I watch every year, and I'm going to give How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. So yeah, anyways guys, that was my review, and yeah, we'll catch you guys for some more Christmas reviews when I get to it later. Bye-bye now.